Picture this. You're scrolling through TikTok watching some influencer gush about living like a local in Bali while paying more for lunch than the actual locals make in a week, completely oblivious to the fact that half the neighborhood wants to throw their overpriced acai bowl directly at their ring light. Welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the uncomfortable truths behind those picture-perfect travel posts. Today, we're exposing the 7 destinations where your dream vacation is literally someone else's economic apocalypse. From housing markets destroyed faster than you can say digital nomad to sacred sites turned into Instagram theme parks, these places prove that one person's wanderlust can be an entire community's nightmare. We're not here to guilt trip you out of traveling. We're here to make you understand why that sweet grandmother selling souvenirs might be secretly cursing your existence in 3 different languages. So buckle up for a reality check that's about to make your travel planning a whole lot more complicated. Destination number 7, Barcelona, the anti-tourist rebellion. Barcelona leads our countdown as the European city that literally declared war on tourists. We're talking about a place where locals spray visitors with water guns, cover tourist buses in protest stickers, and organize mass demonstrations with signs reading "Tourists go home." And honestly, they have every right to be furious. Here's the insanity. Barcelona receives over 30 million tourists annually in a city of 1.6 million residents. That's like if your neighborhood of 100 people suddenly had 2,000 strangers showing up every single day, taking photos of your front door and driving up your rent by 300%. The city center has been completely hollowed out, entire neighborhoods converted into Airbnb theme parks where actual Barcelonians can't afford to live. The tipping point? Cruise ships dumping 20,000 day trippers into the Gothic Quarter simultaneously, creating human traffic jams so dense that emergency services can't get through. Local businesses that served the community for generations got replaced by souvenir shops selling the same made-in-China authentic Spanish trinkets that you can buy literally anywhere. The political response has been nuclear. They're banning new tourist accommodations, limiting cruise ship arrivals, and some neighborhoods are implementing tourist quotas like they're rationing wartime supplies. When a city starts treating tourists like an invasive species, you know the situation has gone completely sideways. But if you think European cities have it rough, wait until you see what happens when tech bros discover tropical paradise and decide to colonize it with co-working spaces. Destination number 6, Bali, digital nomad colonialism. Bali, the Indonesian island that became ground zero for the most tone-deaf cultural appropriation disguised as spiritual awakening in human history. This place went from sacred Hindu sanctuary to Instagram influencer factory so fast that locals are still getting whiplash from the economic tsunami. The digital nomad invasion is straight-up modern colonialism with better Wi-Fi. Western remote workers earning American salaries while paying Indonesian prices have created a 2-tier economy where locals can't afford to live in their own communities. Rice paddies that fed families for centuries are getting bulldozed for co-working spaces and authentic yoga retreat centers run by people who learned about Balinese culture from Wikipedia. Here's the cultural catastrophe. Sacred temples become backdrop props for influencer content, traditional ceremonies get interrupted by drone photography, and holy sites are literally being worn down by millions of visitors who treat ancient spirituality like a photo opportunity. The Balinese concept of Trihita Karana, harmony between humans, nature, and the divine, is being trampled by people who came there specifically to find balance while destroying everyone else's. The environmental destruction is apocalyptic. The island's water table is collapsing under the weight of luxury resorts and infinity pools, while traditional farming communities watch their irrigation systems dry up. Traffic congestion in Ubud is now worse than Los Angeles, except instead of commuters, it's yoga mat-carrying tourists and rented scooters, creating gridlock between wellness centers. Local resentment has reached boiling point, with traditional communities organizing protests and some villages completely banning tourist accommodation. When the people whose ancestors created the culture you're appropriating are begging you to leave, maybe it's time for some serious self-reflection. From spiritual colonialism to our next destination, where cruise ship capitalism turned a medieval city into a floating parking lot nightmare. Destination number 5, Dubrovnik, cruise ship carnage. Dubrovnik, the Croatian medieval masterpiece that Game of Thrones turned into the world's most beautiful tourist death trap. This UNESCO World Heritage Site went from hidden Adriatic gem to human zoo where locals are the endangered species faster than you can say King's Landing. The numbers are absolutely bonkers. Up to 10,000 cruise ship passengers descend on this tiny walled city daily during peak season. That's like cramming the entire population of a small town into a space designed for a medieval village, except everyone's carrying selfie sticks and moving at the speed of confused molasses. The ancient stone streets literally can't handle this human tsunami. They're getting worn down by millions of footsteps, creating permanent damage to 700-year-old architecture. Local life has been completely suffocated. Residents can't get to work because the old town is gridlocked with tour groups. Grocery stores have been replaced by souvenir shops selling "Winter is Coming" t-shirts, and the cost of living has exploded while locals' wages stayed medieval. Many families have been forced to move outside the historic walls, turning their ancestral neighborhoods into an open-air museum they can no longer afford to visit. The Croatian government solution? Implementing entry quotas and installing surveillance cameras to monitor crowd density like they're managing a theme park rather than a living city. When you need crowd control technology to prevent your historic center from collapsing under tourist weight, maybe it's time to admit the tourism model is fundamentally broken.
But if maritime tourism disasters make you seasick, our next destination proves that even landlocked paradises aren't safe from the mass tourism apocalypse. Destination number 4, Santorini, Instagram apocalypse. Santorini, the Greek island that social media turned into the world's most photogenic disaster zone. This volcanic paradise became so synonymous with European vacation goals that it's literally sinking under the weight of influencer expectations and tourist infrastructure. The Instagram effect here is psychological warfare against locals. Every sunset brings hundreds of photographers camping out for hours to capture the perfect shot, turning romantic viewpoints into aggressive photo shoot battlegrounds. The famous blue-domed churches get so mobbed that locals can't actually worship in them anymore. Their own religious sites have been hijacked by wedding photographers and lifestyle bloggers treating sacred spaces like personal studios. The economic distortion is mind-melting. Traditional fishing villages got transformed into luxury resort playgrounds where a simple meal costs more than most Greeks make in a day. Local fishermen can't afford to dock their boats in harbors now dominated by mega yachts, and traditional industries like winemaking are getting bulldozed for hotel developments that only wealthy tourists can afford. The infrastructure is straight up collapsing. The island's water supply can't handle the demand, sewage systems are overwhelmed, and the narrow cliffside roads are clogged with rental ATVs driven by tourists who learn to drive from Mario Kart. Emergency services struggle to respond to accidents because the roads are permanently gridlocked with sightseeing traffic. The volcanic irony is perfect. Santorini was literally created by one of history's most devastating natural disasters, and now it's being destroyed by an entirely man-made catastrophe called mass tourism. Local authorities are considering visitor caps and entry fees, basically turning their home into a paid attraction just to survive the invasion. From volcanic islands to alpine avalanches, our next destination shows what happens when mountain communities get buried under tourist snow. Destination number 3, Amsterdam, party tourism pandemonium. Amsterdam, the Dutch capital that became Europe's ultimate example of how liberal tourism can turn a sophisticated cultural hub into an open-air bachelor party from hell. This city's tolerance policies attracted the worst kind of visitors who confused progressive values with consequence-free playground. The party tourism epidemic is absolutely devastating local quality of life. The red light district has been overrun by groups of drunk tourists treating sex workers like zoo animals. Historic canals are polluted with vomit and beer cans, and residential neighborhoods echo with screaming party groups at 3 a.m. Cannabis coffee shops designed for discreet local use became international tourist magnets, attracting people whose idea of cultural exchange is smoking weed while shouting at bicyclists. The housing catastrophe is next-level insane. Airbnb transformed entire neighborhoods into illegal hotels, with investors buying up family homes to rent exclusively to tourists. Local residents watch their communities get hollowed out by short-term rental empires while they're priced out of their own city. Some blocks now have more tourist beds than actual residents. It's like residential neighborhoods got converted into outdoor hostels without anyone asking permission. The breaking point came when locals started organizing tourism terror protests, blocking tourist buses, and demanding immediate action. The city government finally implemented radical measures, banning cannabis tourism advertising, limiting group sizes, and restricting new tourist accommodations. When Amsterdam, literally one of the world's most tolerant cities, starts implementing tourism prohibition policies, you know the situation reached absolute crisis levels. But if legalized chaos sounds manageable, our next destination proves that even the world's most romantic city can become a waterlogged nightmare when tourists outnumber locals by terrifying margins. Destination number 2, Venice, the sinking museum. Venice, the Italian floating masterpiece that's literally drowning under tourist weight while simultaneously being preserved to death. This UNESCO World Heritage Site has become the ultimate example of how tourism can kill the very thing it claims to celebrate, creating a city that's more museum than actual place where people live. The depopulation crisis is absolutely heartbreaking. Venice's resident population has crashed from 175,000 in the 1950s to barely 50,000 today, with locals fleeing faster than water recedes during low tide. Young Venetians can't afford apartments that get converted to tourist rentals, traditional businesses are replaced by souvenir shops, and entire neighborhoods become ghost towns except for day trippers taking selfies with gondoliers. The infrastructure is collapsing under tourist pressure that defies physics. The city receives 25 million visitors annually. That's 500 tourists for every resident every single year. The ancient foundations literally shake under cruise ships, the narrow bridges create human stampedes during peak season, and the sewage systems overflow when tourist numbers spike. It's like trying to preserve a delicate antique while letting millions of people stomp on it daily. The ultimate insult? Most visitors are day trippers who contribute almost nothing to the local economy while causing maximum damage to the infrastructure. They arrive on massive cruise ships, flood the historic center for a few hours, buy mass-produced souvenirs, and leave behind only trash and wear and tear on irreplaceable medieval architecture. Venice has started charging entry fees and tourist quotas, essentially turning the entire city into a paid attraction just to survive the invasion. Ready for the ultimate tourism disaster? Because our number 1 destination shows what happens when an entire country gets overrun by visitors who fundamentally misunderstand why they're there.
Destination number 1, Japan, cultural collision catastrophe. Japan takes the crown as the ultimate destination where tourist behavior crashes headfirst into local culture with the subtlety of a bullet train derailing. This is what happens when Instagram-obsessed visitors meet a society built on respect, harmony, and not acting like an absolute chaos agent in public spaces. The cultural destruction is systematically brutal.
Sacred temples in Kyoto get overrun by tourists treating centuries-old spiritual sites like amusement park attractions, with visitors climbing on ancient structures for selfies and ignoring basic respect protocols that Japanese children learn before they can walk. The famous bamboo groves look like post-apocalyptic movie sets after millions of visitors trample through them, leaving behind literal mountains of trash in spaces considered sacred by local communities. The behavioral nightmare is legendary among locals. Tourists violate every possible social norm, talking loudly on trains, eating while walking, tipping in restaurants, which is actually insulting in Japanese culture, and taking photos of people without permission. The concept of miwaku, not causing trouble for others, gets obliterated daily by visitors who think Japanese politeness means locals won't express their frustration. Geisha districts have become human zoos where traditional performers get harassed, chased, and photographed like exotic animals. These women are practicing ancient art forms, not cosplaying for tourist entertainment. But try explaining cultural nuance to someone whose idea of Japanese culture comes from anime and Instagram hashtags. The economic paradox is fascinating. Japan desperately needs tourism revenue, but the visitors are systematically destroying what makes Japan unique. Local businesses in historic districts get replaced by tourist-focused establishments. Traditional ryokans become Airbnb properties, and authentic cultural experiences get commodified into authentic theme park versions of themselves. The government response has been increasingly desperate, implementing photography bans in traditional districts, hiring tourist police to manage behavior, and some temples completely restricting foreign visitors. When a culture famous for hospitality starts implementing tourist apartheid policies, you know the situation has reached nuclear levels of dysfunction. The ultimate irony? Most tourists claim they're visiting Japan to experience authentic culture, while their presence systematically destroys the very authenticity they're seeking. It's cultural cannibalism disguised as cultural appreciation. So, there you have it. 7 destinations where your vacation dreams become local nightmares, proving that mass tourism is basically economic colonialism with better marketing. From Barcelona's water gun warfare to Japan's cultural collision course, these places show us that the travel industry's growth at all costs mentality is creating a global disaster of epic proportions. But here's the plot twist. This isn't about shaming you out of traveling. It's about understanding that every destination on your bucket list is someone else's actual home, with real people trying to live real lives while dodging selfie sticks and overpriced tour groups. The solution isn't staying home forever. It's traveling smarter, slower, and with actual respect for the places and people you're visiting. So, before you book that next Instagram-worthy getaway, ask yourself, am I visiting this place to experience it, or am I just collecting content while contributing to its destruction? Because the difference between being a traveler and being a tourist might just determine whether these incredible destinations survive for future generations to enjoy. What's the most tone-deaf tourist behavior you've witnessed? Have you ever been guilty of any of these tourism crimes? Drop your confessions in the comments below. Smash that like button if this opened your eyes to the dark side of wanderlust, and subscribe for more content that makes you question everything you thought you knew about travel. And remember, the best travelers are the ones who leave places better than they found them, not worse. Now go forth and explore responsibly, you beautiful, culturally aware wanderers.